So excited for you to join us. We're joined here today by Alex Nazarevich, who is the VP of Growth at Pixieset. Alex, thank you so much for coming on to the show. Welcome. Maybe you can give us a quick intro and tell us about Pixieset and about your role there.
For sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Michael. So, I've been our VP of growth at Pixieset for about 4 months now. I come from a background in a combo of like B2C roles, kind of focused on e-commerce and digital marketing, and then B2B more on like the lead generation and CRO side of things. I'm really excited to join here at Pixieset. So at Pixieset, we sell software that empowers photographers to grow their businesses sustainably. So everything from galleries to share your work with your clients, to building your website, to managing contracts and projects. We do it all. We make all those tools to make it easy for you to just focus on what you want to do best, which is take pictures and videos of your clients' memorable moments. As VP of growth, I'm in charge of finding vectors to help the business grow as efficiently as possible. And growth, I think you'll find, varies from company to company, and like every growth type role you take on, no two are the same. So typically you'll find that they straddle some combination of maybe product focus and marketing focus. I would say that's definitely the case for me, where I definitely focus within the product and within, our product's positioning and how we show up to the world, to make sure that we're doing that as well as possible, as makes sense, as well as on the growth marketing side. So to identify channels where we think that we can scale really efficiently and just go from there.
Yeah, I love that. So what are some of those channels where you are seeing growth coming from right now?
That's a really interesting one. So I think I speak for most digital marketers when I say it's been a rough couple of years for paid channels. It's been a rough couple of years in general, but
Yep.
I would say especially in paid channels, it's a bit of a bloodbath right now. So I would say that's an area that I'm not putting as much focus. But I really think that this is, encapsulates an opportunity for us as digital marketers to really get back to basics. And what I mean by that is really focus on the quality of the content that you're putting out. And there's a few reasons that I say that. The first is, with the advent of AI, you've got this proliferation of content. I think I've seen a couple of posts or Substacks that call it AI-driven slop. And we've all seen it. You see it on LinkedIn. You see it in Substack. You see it in e-newsletters that you read. And so I think that as media consumers, we've become a lot more discerning about what we're willing to spend our time on, because there's a lot more content. And what that means for you as a marketer as a growth leader, is that you need to focus on how do you bring value to your customers, and how do you cut out all the extra fluff and just give them what they need to do what they're trying to do with your product. And even more than that, how they can excel in their space. And so you need to get into their head and understand what's keeping them up at night. What do they really care about? What things are of great interest to them, and then deliver on that. And that's the really exciting thing about being in a growth role at this time, is that straddling product and marketing, you can find ways to improve the product, or find ways to do things within the product that then can become valuable to potential new customers. And then you can build campaigns around that. And that becomes a much more authentic way of connecting with your customers, instead of the same potentially clickbait driven blog posts and social media posts over and over ad nauseum.
Yeah, for sure. So, I see a lot of marketers kind of trying to find this balance between quantity and quality. And it's almost a cliche in the sense that, of course, we've always tried to find that balance as marketers. But now, as you said, like with the advent of AI, it's so easy for people to just crank out
Yeah.
mediocre, average content, and the quantity is just unlimited,
Yeah.
but the quality is, not always there. So how are you trying to find that balance now? And you mentioned authenticity. Like, how are you trying to find that authentic voice?
Yeah.
What are you telling your team to do? And what are you measuring them on to get to that
Yeah.
point?
Yeah. So I would say as far as authenticity goes, I think that we're focusing on the quality quantity trade-off, or kind of wrong. And that's natural, especially in a marketing role, there's never enough time to do everything. So when you're presented with a platform like ChatGPT or any other LLM you can get your hands on, it's easy to think, great, we'll just do more of what we're doing. But that's the wrong way to think about it. My team has found the best success in actually spending more time sweating over what is that core content that you're creating. So making something like something super exciting, original, unique, based on research that only you have, or based on something that only you can deliver to your customers. In my previous role at Unbounce, we spent a lot of time putting together this report called the Conversion Benchmark Report.
Yep.
Yeah, you
Seen
should
it
go
many,
down.
many times.
Yeah, I
Thank you for
still,
that.
I still reference it. And I referenced it before I worked there, and I was excited to bring it back for a new year when I did work at Unbounce. And that is something based on internal data upon like millions of data points. And that's something that nobody else can deliver to the market, but it's delivering on a pain point that keeps marketers up at night, which is like, how am I performing relative to the competition in my industry?
Hmm.
And so that took a lot of work for the team to put together. But once you've created it, you can use something like ChatGPT to support you in writing the posts about it, writing the outlines of webinars or videos about it, writing social posts about it, and like chopping that content up into a million pieces. So if you think about using ChatGPT and similar as a way to make your distribution more efficient, but keep the center of your content like sacred as just like a human created activity, you're going
Hmm.
to have success.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, and particularly, I think industry studies, proprietary data-based studies. I think we're seeing that as well. That resonates well with the market.
Yeah.
But even then, or I guess especially in those kinds of cases, it's how do you get the buy-in for it? Because like you said, it takes a lot of resources to put something like that together. So is that something that in the past you found like it kind of been on your plate to make that decision, or like how do you sell it to whomever you're reporting to?
Yeah, I think in cases like that, you're right. It can be a very difficult sell, and sometimes I would suggest starting smaller. Some of it depends on how much executive buy-in you have. I was fortunate that my leadership was very invested in the case of Conversion Benchmark Report because it was very easy to go into the data and show like the huge volume of leads that had touched this
Yeah.
article that were coming into our sales funnel. And so often, I mean, personally, I'm always going back to the well for more data. And that's kind of how I operate. If you don't have that historical precedent set, you're right. Maybe start smaller with something that you can create in a couple of weeks or a single sprint and build from there.
So how have you found that to be at Pixieset? Is there kind of a parallel there that where you're going in a similar direction, or do you have to just kind of just pivot completely to something else?
Yeah, I mean, when your target market is completely invested in aesthetics, in perfect like life moment capturing photography, your brand has to be completely on point. And you have to treat your brand standards with the utmost care. But the best part of it is that you have access to a ton of inspiration as far as user generated content goes. And so I would say that's another look at the flip side of it, where you have a really active and engaged community who are constantly creating and constantly showing new ways to
Mhm.
do their job. And so it's really exciting to work somewhere like that because you get access to either work with people who are doing this or find inspiration in that to create your own content. And that makes it much easier to create a very visually engaging marketing strategy. And in general, I would say again, coming back to like we're thinking about quality versus quantity all wrong. Um, I would say the same applies here when you're in that kind of B2B to C environment, but maybe even more so. As marketers, again, now that we've got all these tools to help us do more, I worry that we sometimes find ourselves doing too much. And I think if you really pare down to what is the essence of what you're trying to deliver, funnily enough, you will cut through the noise by leaving more white space in your
Mhm.
marketing campaign, by leaving that blank space and really focusing on the absolute most impactful things you can do instead of spamming with hundreds of noisy social posts, emails, etc. You can really ensure that your customers and your prospects pick up on what the most important message you're trying to get across.
And so, as VP of growth, I imagine that ultimately your metrics that you're looking at and that you're being held accountable to are fairly numbers based, fairly
Yeah.
lead sales based.
Yep.
So, what are those metrics, and how do you go from the really sort of visual approach, positioning the brand? To okay, well that is going to get us X% growth this year.
Right. So a good place to start, where I started at Pixieset, was really like tracking prospects through our entire customer journey, from becoming aware of with
Yep.
our existing marketing and what are those marketing touch points? What channels do we operate in? What channels have we tried maybe scaled back on? Like, what is the state of marketing? And
Yep.
watching them like come through the website. What pages are they visiting? Like, how does the pricing page factor into it? How do the product pages factor into it? Like, what are they engaging and not engaging with? And then understanding, so once they sign up, it's a freemium product. So you sign up without a credit card, you just go in and you can start using it.
Yep.
And then understanding what actions do they take to make them most likely to have success with us in the long run. And it really depends. Again, in some business models, you may be focused on how do I get them to the point of upgrading and monetizing as quickly as possible. In others, it may be how do I get them, and I think this is more successful, what are the magic features that if they use them or they're successful at doing these particular steps, like suggest that they're going to stick around for the long haul, because that means you've got
Mhm.
an incredible product market fit, and
Yep.
you're cultivating a loyal fan base. So that's what I mean by like the entire growth model is you have to understand how customers flow through it. If you're in a sales-led organization, as growth leader, you may be responsible for getting leads to the doorstep of sales and responsible for making sure that's not a weird transition, that there's
Yep.
consistent messaging, but you're still responsible for understanding, well, if they get to sales, then maybe 1 in 4 of those will or 1 in 2 of those will go through a demo, and then another 1 in 2 of those will have further sales conversations, and maybe a certain fraction of those will go on to become paying customers. And so that you can trace that all the way back up into the product, up into marketing, and say, if I'm making a change that moves this stage of the funnel by X%, that will
Yep.
change our overall revenue output by Y%. And if you can do that, that's an incredibly powerful tool to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like short answer is ultimately everything is based on money. Like how much revenue
Yep.
are you driving for your organization, and how well are you able to articulate what you're doing is impacting that.
So if there is one or maybe two things that you have seen, and I know like with Pixieset, it's relatively early days for you, so I don't know if that's the best reference case or think about Unbounce, but what would be recently the one or two things that have been most impactful in driving that outcome?
Yeah. Again, funnily enough, it's kind of a back to basics approach. I feel like the macro like marketing cycle has gone from, the advent of SaaS and the increased competitiveness in the digital marketing space, and then through like zero interest rate policy environment, so growth at all
Hmm.
costs and like scale everything up regardless of what it takes you. And then suddenly interest rates started ticking up. And I was talking a lot about this in the past couple of years, as everyone was, and it's like it flipped the whole equation on its head. So suddenly paid channels became less viable as growth vectors. And so when I say back to basics, I mean you have to nail your product market fit. You have to nail the fact, like I guess what I'm saying is over time, I think we as marketers and growth leaders stopped listening as acutely to our customers. If you get in there and understand what are your customers' pain points that they're solving with your product or your competitors and what they're using and not using your product for, you can't go wrong. And then cut out all the noise and form a very efficient, very targeted marketing funnel based on that. And that could look like any number of things. I'm trying to think of some examples. A good example would be the pricing page. We try and throw everything in there to appeal to as broad a spectrum of people as possible. Realistically, people are only looking for, say, 2, 3, or 4 features. They're not going to be able to go through, I mean, maybe with AI, but
Hmm.
people aren't going to go through themselves and like do a massive meta analysis of like your
Right.
50 feature pricing page versus like 8 competitors. They're really solving one specific problem, and it comes down to, does it have it? Is it the right price? And can they do it effectively? Another thing is around like your positioning out in the market. Like, what is the messaging that you're using to refer to your product? I think a lot of us claim that our product costs less or helps you get things done faster, and that's just table stakes. Like, we wouldn't be looking for
Mhm.
a solution if a solution can do that for us. So over and above that, how exactly are you going to accomplish that? And I think if you take a hard look at your product's positioning and the messaging that you use to articulate that in the market, you will find that it's too vague and it's not linked directly to your best performing customer segments. So those two are things you can't go wrong with. And once you do those, you'll have your hands full for a few quarters, updating your messaging, coming up with new campaigns, finding new channels that would work best based on these learnings.
Yeah, love it, love it. So what is your best performing channel at this point?
I'd say the channel I'm most excited about right now is our referral program. We have, we have thousands of satisfied customers, and it's been really exciting and rewarding to see them go out and refer other people and say, hey, this is a great product, you should be using it.
Yeah.
In general, I think that referral program or like a referral channel, word of mouth is a really powerful one, no matter what business
Yeah.
you're in. And so doing anything you possibly can to encourage that. It could be in product, like if you notice that they've accomplished a certain action in your product, or maybe they're a power user, maybe they're in there every day and they're super frequent. Just like an outreach, like, hey, we're so stoked to see you love our product. Did you know you can refer people and get credit off your next bill, kind of thing. I found that to be immensely helpful. And I think in this day and age, again, we're being spammed with all this noise. Authentic connections are the most valuable to cultivate. And so things like referral program, and sort of related to that, affiliates, anything that you can do to get legitimate discourse happening around your product out in the market is going to be very beneficial.
Oh, that's amazing. So I know we're coming up on the end of our interview here, but what are the trends, or what is the main trend you're watching for 2025 that you think that would make a big difference for, or potentially could make a big difference for your business?
Oh, interesting. Let me think on that. This is probably not the flashiest answer, but I'm the most curious to see what happens to organic search in the next
Mhm.
12 months. I have no idea where I find Gemini AI summaries at the top of Google unreliable at best.
Hmm.
Um, so I find on the one hand, going deeper into AI for quick answers, and then deeper into like the bottom of the first page of Google and Co. If I'm looking for a specific article. So what does this mean as far as organic search? And this is like a big one for everybody. And I don't think it lets any of us off the hook by way of content marketing, by way of SEO focused content creation. I just need to know how it all fits together. And so I'm keeping an eye on this, and how do I adapt my strategy to match the moment.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Is there anything that you've changed when it comes to organic search, like since you, for example, have been at Pixieset versus what you were doing at Unbounce?
I think that, and this started, I would say this was kind of the approach at Unbounce as well, but I would say especially where things are going in the last few years, I think they may continue in that direction, which is it's not as much about, again, the quantity that you put out, because everybody can do that now. It's like, it's sort of, what do you have that nobody else can have? So do you have a long-standing website? Like, is your website, is it 5 months old? Is it 5 days old? Is it 5 years old? Like, how old is your site? And what kind of domain authority do you have? Like, do you have a lot of backlinks from reputable sources? And are you a well-known voice in the marketplace? And so in this era when everything is speeding up, funnily enough, incumbents may find themselves in possession of some very valuable property in regards to their domain,
Yeah.
counterintuitively. And on top of that, it's going back and refreshing old content to make it relevant again. I
Yep.
think that you're going to be better served by having a few pieces that are absolutely knockout pieces, as opposed to having, 50, 100 blog posts surrounding a topic and trying to hem in a bunch of keywords that way. Again, I think the market was already going that way. I just expect it's going to accelerate. So know what's working for you, double down on it, triple down on it, be updating it, make it like a living, breathing document. And I think that's a good way to meet the moment in that regard.
Love it. Yeah, I think that's really well said, and that's certainly also the general direction that we're seeing. When we talked about quality versus quantity a little bit more in this interview, and that's certainly what we're also recommending to people to do, is to focus more on the quality, the authenticity, and yes, like that might mean that you're not putting out as much, but guess what? Like you said, anybody can put out quantity, but it's much harder to get the quality right, to
Yep.
get that quality piece. Well, thank you so much, Alex. I really, really appreciate your time and coming on. Very, very insightful. What's the best way for folks to get in touch with you if they wanted to chat with you a little bit more?
Yeah, add me on LinkedIn. I find myself always on there, watching people's content, asking questions, getting asked questions. Yeah, engage with me there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Michael.